Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to do this without aid of microphone, but I can talk out traditionally. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, fine. I did that at the university a few weeks back, and one of the students back said, I can't, but I can hear you, but I'm happy to swap places with somebody who can't. So, let me just start off by saying both Ian and I think a lot of people within the neuroscience community really dislike the term neuromarketing. Because it sounds like, you know, you can dispense with all your traditional methodologies, because all you're going to do is to put some electrodes on somebody's head or put them into a fMRI scanner, and you instantly know exactly what they're thinking, and you'll be able to press the buy button and they'll rush out and buy whatever you're trying to sell. And it's not like that. So what the term we prefer is neurometrics. We see it as just another metric. It's an objective metric, and one which we think is of immense value, but it's certainly not the whole story. Now, when we go shopping, when we look at people shopping, we like to think that they are quickly and easily making up their mind about a product and deciding to buy it or not to buy it, and that there's really no conflict going on in their brain. Well, what our research has shown, and the research we take part in at Mindlab International, is what we call ambulatory EEG, which essentially means measuring the electrical activity, if you like, the languages of the brain, when people are in real-life situations. So when they're going shopping at Asda, for example, or in Boots, moving around the shelves, we equip them also with either a video camera, which is fitted into a pair of spectacles, so we then get a real-time view of what they're seeing and hearing. We can measure those two parts of the atmosphere. Or else we can equip them with ambulatory eye-tracking devices, which shows us exactly what they're looking at. So an eye cam will give us their general direction of gaze, but an eye tracking device will show us precisely what they're looking at, exactly where their eyes are fixating. So we look at these things, and what we have found is that essentially there are three areas in the brain in which you should be most aware. There's an area of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, which is deep in the brain. A second area of importance is an area called the insula, which is a fifth lobe of the brain. It's tucked away under the temporal lobe. The temporal lobes are here under your temple. In fact, they're called the temporal lobes because they're under the temporal bone. And the temporal bone is called temporal bone from the Latin tempus, time, because as you get older, like I am, that's the first part of your hair which goes grey. Oh, you've got a media, right?
We're recording you for posterity.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay, I'm now right up. Fantastic. So the third area we want to look at today is a thing called the medial prefrontal cortex. And essentially, in simple terms, we can think of this as the decision-making portion of the brain. This is where the executive decisions are made. So these are the three shopping centres, if you like, in the brain. Let me run through what each of them does. The nucleus accumbens. This is the reward centre of the brain. This gets excited when I see the iPad, which I really want to buy. I don't need to buy it, but I want to buy it. It's my nucleus accumbens which is telling me, go out and get this. This is really hot. This is fantastic. You must have this. Your life will not be complete unless you have an iPad in your, you know. So that's the kind of thing. So this is what the nucleus accumbens does. It produces rewards. And when we go shopping and we see something we like, it is this part of the brain which is exciting, which tells us this is something which you really should be interested in getting. Against that, there is the insula, which is kind of much more cautious. It weighs up the risks of things. And one of the things that it does is weigh up the risk when the price is presented. Okay? So it's the insula which says, hey, hold on a minute. Can you really afford this? Do you really want to invest this amount of your disposable income in this particular product? And the third area, I said, is the medial cortex, the frontal part of the brain. So one of the ways we can measure this is by actually looking at whether the left or the right hemisphere is more active. This is well established in the academic literature. The left side of the brain, this side of the brain, which controls the right side of my body. Okay? So if I have a stroke on the left side of my brain, in my left hemisphere, it's my right side, which may well be paralyzed or affected in some way. This is the approach side of the brain. And here we have some studies which we've done where we're looking at the amount of activity. This is amplitude of the electrical signal, and the reds and the yellows show a higher level of amplitude. So one way of measuring how the brain, the medial frontal cortex, is responding is by looking at what is happening under the sensors on the front part of the brain. We can't actually measure what's going on in the nucleus accumbens, or to some extent in the insula, simply because they're much deeper in the brain. Now, I'm not going to deal with this at any great length because this is something Ian is going to be talking about. When we look at atmospherics, this is the whole environment in which the person goes out to buy something, the whole feeling they get, the whole experience, the experience of pleasantness or unpleasantness. And what we're talking here is not so much the outcome dimension. The outcome dimension is what I buy and whether I'm satisfied when I bring home what I've bought with what I've bought. What we're concerned here is the process dimension, which would be things like the tangibles, what the shopper can see and hear and feel and taste perhaps and touch, the atmosphere, the temperature, the humidity, all these kind of things. And we think by looking at the atmospherics, you can hugely enhance the customer experience. It's very hard to drive more customers to retail premises. It's much easier to try and persuade those that are there to spend more money or to spend money at all, to become not so much browsers as buyers. Now, in terms of this, the four things which we think are essential are time, attention, trust, and affordability. An acronym, TATA, nothing to do with an industrial conglomerate. Time. We are all time short. We have 168 hours available to us each week, which would be fine, except we all have 368 hours worth of things we've got to do, must do, want to do, need to do, have to do. Therefore, we are very time-starved. That's not so for all the demographic. Retired people, for example, tend very often to be quite time-rich, but often income-poor. So they do have more time to spend. But for the majority of people, shopping is something which they often fit in. And this particularly applies, I distinguish between doing the shopping and going shopping. And doing the shopping means buying things which I must have, dog food because I have some dogs, perhaps nappies if I had a baby, things like that. I must have these. That's doing the shopping. And especially when we're doing the shopping, we want to be as efficient in terms of our time expenditure as possible. Going shopping is part of the leisure activity, one of the things which we like to do. And we will spend much more time when we're going shopping than when we're doing the shopping. So anything which saves time for the shopper, by and large, will enhance the shopper's experience. So things like design. You know, a lot of design, a lot of graphics, it seems to me, is turned out by lithe, 25-year-old hotshot graphic designers to actually be read by aged people, perhaps who've forgotten their glasses and have got a bad back and don't want to look up. So what appeals to a 20-year-old may be very hard for somebody who's in their 50s or 60s. And this is the market. I mean, the greying of the UK, this is a huge market, very often with very good disposable income, with very high aspirations, who can spend on wants rather than just needs. So think about signage. Now, I have produced a paper which is available free of charge as a PDF, and this goes into all these things in much greater detail than we can do in this 30-minute presentation. So if you just want to email me, david@themindlab.org, the Mindlab, the definite article is important, themindlab.org, I'll happily send it to you. And we look there at a lot of things to do with signage, how long people have actually to read a sign. If you've got a sign which takes 11 seconds to read, and the person's going to spend 2 seconds on it, they're not going to be able to read it. I mean, quite simple, basic things like that. But when we're doing our research, we find so many simple mistakes. This is the pictures on the right-hand side are from an iCam. This is a study which we did in Porto, in Portugal, where we have an office. And so this is what the shopper is actually seeing. You can see the shopper's trolley. The glasses are showing us exactly what she is seeing. And one of the things which an American retail anthropologist you've probably heard of called Paco Underhill has developed is what he has found is what he's called the butt brush factor. That if a woman particularly has her bottom brushed by another shopper, she's very likely to actually want to leave the premises very rapidly. So narrow aisles. When we were measuring this woman's level of arousal and attention, the fact she had to navigate her trolley through this rather congested part of the shop there showed a very strong negative response, a very strong right-hand hemisphere avoidance response. So signage, again, save people's time. People hate to waste time, and they hate to appear stupid, and they hate to appear clumsy. The final thing, and this is the thing which appeals to the insular, the kind of cautious part of the brain, is how much is it going to cost? And there are various ways, which you'll be very familiar with, of actually deflecting the insular from worrying about the cost. So extended payment. Look at the DFS adverts, for example, on television. How it's like, you're not actually going to ever have